Thank you, Addie. Thank you very much. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed lunch. And now we're ready for the second half of the program. So we have a number of great presentation speakers and panels for you to listen to. The next person is Marc Ablay, who is the product manager at Blockchain Consulting. He's going to talk about trust in blockchain, but he's also going to talk a little bit about the business cases that you'll see in blockchain, which my advice to you is, as wonderful and revolutionary and game-changing blockchain technology is, people want to talk about what it's going to do for them. So look at the business cases and the personal cases, and you'll have a much more successful conversation. So I'm going to introduce Marc onto the stage. Thanks.
Okay. Hi, I'm Marc Ablay from Blockchain Consulting. We're here in Munich, so we're a local company, and I'm very happy to be part of the BlockShow 2017. We had a great time during the last years, and we wanted to give something back to the community. So we were in blockchain technologies. All the people inside the company were involved in that for several years, and I think it's a great opportunity. So we're co-sponsoring this event, and also this is not part of the slide, but I want to mention that if you're an entrepreneur, you want to start new blockchain-related business, then maybe you want to visit us at the booth. We might have some options for you to kickstart your ideas. Okay, but let's talk about the challenges in blockchain business. So everybody today seems to be talking about blockchain. Seems to be the technology that solves everything, and I think this is great, but it also causes some kind of ambiguity. Oh, there's a screen. That's great. So since 2008, when Satoshi proposed his initial white paper for the blockchain, lots have happened, and lots of new technology emerged on top of blockchains or different blockchains. And now, if you talk to 10 people, you will get 10 different perspectives on what a blockchain actually is. And this is something that you have to be aware of when you're conducting business there, because you might not be in for what you actually expected. So you have to be precise about the symbols that are used, and miscommunication is the bane for all collaboration. So this is something to really watch out for. What are the people actually meaning when they say blockchain? Because if it's just a buzzword, it doesn't mean anything. Okay, let's settle on a few characteristics that a blockchain has. Otherwise, maybe it's just a database. So initially, it was meant for decentralized trust. For decentralization of the trust. You have many peers that you interact with, and you don't trust them. Not because you think they're all evil, but just because you want to be sure that what you're doing will not interfere by some kind of mistake, or well, potentially there's somebody evil out there. And so the fundamental idea in the beginning was to use blockchain to take the trust from a central entity that provides some service to you and distribute it into the protocol of communication that is used between the peers. And this was genius. And then there are other characteristics, like the possibility to validate your data when you have this shared ledger of information. It doesn't always have to be about cryptocurrencies. So just state of information that you share with your peers, with your other co-working companies, and you want to have the ability to quickly validate, is the state of information that I have the same that the others also have, and is it accurate and consistent? And this is a characteristic that the blockchain will usually provide to you. Also, features like privacy and anonymity are quite frequently used in conjunction with blockchain, but as I've talked with people, they can take some of these characteristics out, and they're still doing blockchain business. But you have to figure that on your own, who you're talking with and what characteristics are important for them. Then something else, if you can read a business case and replace all the words blockchain with a database, it's probably not worth going through the hassle of all the blockchain thing if it still makes sense if you replace the words. Okay. And looking at business cases that are blockchain related in general, there are several types. This list is certainly not complete, but they're like the big types. Either you create a blockchain on your own. So several months ago, there was Zcash creating a public blockchain with new anonymity features. And their business case was crowdfunding that with an ICO, and this is how they get their money from. They're developing a public blockchain. Okay, this is one type of business you can conduct when it comes to blockchain technology. You can create a decentralized application that runs on top of a blockchain, so it doesn't mean that you're coding a blockchain, but you're coding an application that uses blockchain, but it is directly tied to that, and it won't work without, so that's a dApp. For example, iExec is some decentralized application that is used for computing, for decentralized computation, very, very good. I think it's similar to Golem, you might have heard of that. And then there's services that just interact with blockchains that already exist. And this, for example, Coinbase is a popular wallet, or is any kind of exchange. And those are different types, and depending on the type of business you have, or the relation to blockchain, different challenges await you. Okay. Besides the relation to the blockchain, there's also the scope. There are permissionless and permissioned blockchains. I'm not sure if you've heard of this today. Certainly there might have been some talks about it, but it's mainly about who are the actors on the blockchain. A public blockchain is accessible by anyone. They don't need any previous sign up or go through any process. They can just use it as they go, and in a permission blockchain, you know your peers, you know who is working with you, and you might have a legal construct supporting that. And I think one of the main differences might be that for the permissionless, the public blockchain, you have the miners that are creating the proof of work, which is essential to the consensus mechanism and to the decentralization of trust. And if you want to attack that, you have to have more than 50% of the hash power. And in a permissioned or closed blockchain, you are the number that you have to go over is 50% of the votes, so of the peers, everybody has a vote, and you have to overcome that to do something that's not supposed to be there. So this is a possible attack vector there. And for private blockchains, there are several benefits. So they still have the immutability, and you have very good control over what kind of data is visible to whom. You have permission control, who can access or who can put in data and what kind of data, and it's easier to scale. So usually it's easier to scale because you have not so many. The distribution, the topology is different, and you have better control on how that works. And what's actually also very good is that since you know the peers and you already might be in business with them, you have some contracts. So there's a kind of legal sandbox. You don't have to expect everybody to go rogue on your blockchain network because you can sue them because you know them. And this actually is the resolution to the drawback that you're required for minimum of trust, because if you would use proof of stake in a private blockchain, and somebody could easily overpower or overcome these 50% hash power barrier and just create some changes in the blockchain. Okay, that's easy for private blockchain. For Bitcoin, for example, the Bitcoin network operates on mining power that consumes more than I think it's related to the energy consumption of Ireland. If you can produce half of that, you might be able to counterfeit data in there, but the costs of that might exceed the gain, and then there could still be a hard fork, so to repair that. The challenges for public and for private blockchains are mainly the same, so I think I've already talked about that. Can skip that. And when you have a business case that's blockchain related, any of the relations that I talked before, it is crucial to know who the developers are. I think the pitches that we had, I'm sure they have great people, but this is always something you have to really take care for, that the people not just passionate about it, but really have a professional track record and know what they're doing, because we saw that a couple of times. Using a blockchain will not secure your business. Mt. Gox, the DAO, there was so much money lost because of, well, people thought there is a blockchain, so it's super secure, and then they put their money in, and then in the end, the wrong code can ruin everything. So I would suggest that for IT projects in general, if this is true, but for blockchain-related projects, it's even more important to take care for who are the guys doing that, what quality assurance culture do they have. Partners can help. You can have great advisors from the industry, or you have a community that is into that for a long time and has experience. So open sourcing code in blockchain is not uncommon, and it's a great way to really fix issues. And I here mentioned the DAO. If you change something, you will have the challenge of maybe you have to roll back something that's not as easily. And this is where we come to extensibility. Usually when you have a business, requirements change. You need to adapt, you need to add something or change something. It can be a problem in a usual IT project. And if it's blockchain related, then this gets even more problematic because if it's a public blockchain, you cannot just roll back. Okay, you cannot just, you can, but it's not like easily do that. It has severe implications, and you have to be aware of what that means. And also, if you're not creating the blockchain, like take the example of Zcash again, if you're just a service that interacts with a blockchain, still you have to be aware that they might have to adapt and change something, and they might have to perform some kind of forks, and then figure if you're compatible with that. What does that cause for you? So it can all be overcome. I don't want to scare you, but these are very important things to consider. Then one more short thing about the network that is underlying the blockchains. So as I said before, the 50% attack is a very common thing in blockchain technology. But if your network is too centralized, I mean, there is like decentralized and distributed. As you can see, the distributed network has more peers, like everybody's connected to everybody. If you want to convince a single node, if you want to attack just that one, it is enough to isolate it and to communicate false information to that one. You can still pick one and play games with it. And so just stating that you need like global 50% of the hash power is not correct. There are ways for single nodes to go around that. And I think this is just one case of many where the devil is in the detail. Blockchain is secure if used right, and if you know where the boundaries are. Oh, and then great thing, scaling Bitcoin. Who's invested in Bitcoin right now? Can we have some hands? Okay. Who was invested in Bitcoin and changed to altcoins? Okay. Okay. I won't say anything to that, but Bitcoin has a certain issue in terms of scale. There is a governance problem. Okay, there are certain technical solutions to how the network can scale, and while people, there is a consensus mechanism in blockchain, but this doesn't solve the problem of the governance. There has to be a consensus in people that also want to do things. There's politics involved, and when you want to scale your system, you can do some quick math. So if you just look at the Satoshi white paper, you can figure by the numbers in there that you won't be able to do much more than 10 transactions per second on a global scale. Right now, I mean, there are technologies like Thunder Network, Lightning Network, payment channels, whatsoever. You can still solve that afterwards. But if you look at the initial proposal, there is a limit, and you can get there if you look close enough. And you have to figure that. So if you have a lemonade stand and you want to integrate it with blockchain, then you know with Bitcoin you will not be able to sell more than 10 lemonades per second on Earth, and that will be your limitation. And if you don't use other solutions on top of that. Okay. Regulation is important. Just because the blockchain with its distributed character might allow certain actions, it doesn't mean that you can do it everywhere in the world. The regulator might have his very own opinion of whether or not that's good what you're doing. And of course, you have to be compliant. So depending on your business case, there are some compliances that you have to follow. And if you have great features like anonymity or privacy, does your blockchain still allow for that? If you don't have the data, how do you create the reports required by the regulator? You have to take that into account if it concerns your business case. Also, short notice for the regulator, this will be interesting times coming up. If there's a decentralized internet, ZeroNet, for example, or whatever does the same thing, and you can't take down a website with content that's not supposed to be there. How do you act? You can't take down the internet. This is so interesting what's coming up in the next years. I mentioned that before, product life cycles. If the blockchain that's related to what you're doing is changing, is going down, maybe one of the big blockchains, the public blockchains, will just fade away slowly. We can't predict that. And your business case is tied to that. How do you react? You have to be diverse. You have to be able to, you have to be flexible. We're in this kind of evolution. There's some Darwinism of blockchains, and be prepared for that. It's not going to stay like it is today. Okay, there's lots of stuff will happen. And here comes what I would call the neck breaker for most of the blockchain business cases that I've heard of. So you have a great team, you have a great idea, the network is there, you have the funding is set, and then you figure that when you release your product to the market just can't digest it. Okay, for example, Tesla built superchargers across the US for people to have long distance rides with their electric cars. Without the support in the market for the product, you will not be successful. There are certain adapter technologies, just to mention two here. These are payment solutions. If people want to buy, let's get back to the lemonade stand, you want to sell lemonade for people, allow people to buy with Bitcoin, Xapo and BitPay would solve that problem for you. Okay, so now you can integrate the existing market and make it compatible with your blockchain-related business. But if the adapter dies, then what are you doing then? Again, this is something for product life cycles. And finally, a list of security things. I'm not sure, I don't see any time. Elizabeth, do you know? 2 minutes? Okay, that's perfect. The double spend attack, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, is maybe one of the most common things. Let's imagine you're Starbucks and you want to sell your coffee and allow people to come in and pay with Bitcoin. And then somebody comes in, pays, creates the transaction. Creating a transaction on a blockchain doesn't mean it's instantly in the blockchain. First it's pending. Well, this is true for public blockchains. Maybe there's a private blockchain that does this different, but for public blockchains you have pending transactions. And after some statistical fixed time, like in Bitcoin, about 10 minutes, somebody gathers that transaction and puts it into a block. And so that means, in average, you have 5 minutes time of doing something smart. You leave Starbucks with your coffee, and then you send the exact same, the identical Bitcoins that you use for paying back to yourself with a higher fee, and the miners will prepare that transaction above the other one that you issued before, and Starbucks has one coffee left and no money more. And of course, there you can defend against that by waiting the confirmation, but then who wants to buy a coffee and wait 10 minutes? And again, for that, there are also solutions. BitPay, I think they have been very smart about how to tackle that. And actually, for all the threats that are in here, you can overcome them all. This is not. I don't want to scare you. Just wanted to raise the awareness that just because somebody labels something with blockchain, it's not thoroughly secure. There are risks involved, and this is what I just want to communicate here, that these are times of great chances, of great possibilities, but you have to be careful and precise when you investigate the business cases. So, and if you need help for that, we're here. That was the talk about challenges in Bitcoin, or sorry, in blockchain-related business cases. I think it's a great time, it's an amazing time, and hope you will get through that and take the best out of it.
I have time for one question. Oh, yeah.
Okay.